From Beyond Marketing, it's the 20-Minute Call, a podcast about the dreamers, boundary pushers, rebels, and champions of the skydiving industry. Each episode is a narrative journey highlighted by the highs, lows, and luck that the skydiving industry delivers, as told by the most influential people within the sport. If you've ever dreamed of becoming a skydiver, perhaps opening a drop zone, or becoming the next world champion, check out the 20-Minute Call hosted by me, James LeBarry. Doug Barron is a second-generation skydiver and one of the top four-way Formation Skydiving competitors in the world, who has won at nearly every level. While in college at Virginia Tech in 2009, his collegiate four-way team upset the mighty U.S. Air Force Academy to win the U.S. Collegiate National Championships. That same year, this same team made up of college students also won the U.S. National Championships in the intermediate division, beating 32 other teams comprised of adults twice their age. 1 year later, Doug and his teammates showed that the success of 2009 was no fluke, as they won the 2010 U.S. Nationals in the advanced division. In 2019, Doug and his teammates of Team Skydive Chicago Rhythm XP literally shocked themselves and the skydiving world when they upset the reigning national champions Arizona Airspeed by a single point in the 11th round jump-off in what has to be considered one of the top 5 most exciting finishes in U.S. Nationals history. Today, Doug and his team SDC Rhythm XP have their sights focused on recapturing gold at the U.S. Nationals in order to advance to a future World Cup and World Meet. Welcome to the 20-Minute Call podcast, Doug Barron.
Thank you for having me, James. That stuff is me. I'm kind of taken aback to hear all of it again, but thank you for having me. I'm excited to be a part, and I think you were there kind of through all of that, and kind of saw the beginning and the infancy, and were a large part in supporting VTSD and then Turbo in the beginning days, and so thank you for that. And it's pretty cool to have us do this podcast like 18 years later from when we first met and all of that.
It's been fun to watch. It's been a journey. So thank you for being here. Let's hop right in. I got lots of questions for you.
Shoot.
Even though I've known you for so long, I got questions. So let's start out with your dad as a skydiver. You've been around the sport from a very young age. Did you know that you one day want to be a skydiver?
Yeah, I knew that I wanted to jump for sure. And actually, when I was younger, before I started jumping, what I wanted to do was shoot video. And what we would actually do in the swimming pool with my friends is like, I would make them launch an exit off the side of the pool, and then I would shoot video and float over top of them underwater. But yeah, it was always like, I remember seeing Norman Kent videos and wanting to be a videographer when I was younger.
Wow. How old were you when you first came to a drop zone?
5.
Okay. So you've really been legit around it for a long time. When did you, I am assuming you made your first jump at 18 or
16.
16.
So this year was my 20th year in the sport.
Was it better than you thought it would be when you landed from that first jump? Or was it what you expected because you've been around it for so long?
I'm not sure what I really expected, but it was awesome. And it was pretty cool because my dad took me on my first 2 tandems, and then I started AFF about a month after that.
Is your dad surprised by how far you've come in the sport?
I don't know. You'd have to ask him.
All right, I'll ask him.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd love to talk.
If you're listening, I'm going to be calling you. You chose to go to Virginia Tech.
True.
Which was a great decision.
Yeah.
As that ended up propelling you into the competitive spotlight. Why did you choose to go there as opposed to anywhere else?
A couple of reasons. I also got into Oklahoma State, and my father went to Oklahoma State, and my mom and my sister went to Virginia Tech. At the time, I wanted to pursue engineering, and they had a great engineering school at Virginia Tech. Also, some of my skydiving friends, Jamie Sides, who I started jumping with in Chambersburg, was also at Virginia Tech, and I knew they had a skydiving club. Kind of all of those things. My parents were living in Virginia at the time. Just kind of made more sense for my life at that time.
So it's fair to say that because of Virginia Tech skydiving team is a big reason why you went there?
It was definitely a selling point, for sure.
So you and I first became acquainted when you and your teammates from Virginia Tech, which, by the way, I only knew you all for VTSD, and I didn't know, almost for like a year that you were training at Skydive Carolina, that you were the Virginia Tech Space Dockers.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful name.
Yeah.
What's the story behind this name?
I'm not really sure if I want to get into...
Oh, it's like that.
A little bit. For those of you listening, if you see me in person, you can ask me what the Space Dockers meant, and maybe I'll tell you.
Okay, wow, I'm more intrigued. I look forward to chatting about this when we get off the air.
Yeah.
In 2009, VTSD exploded on the scene by winning both the Collegiate Nationals and the National Championships in Intermediate.
Yes.
All in the same year.
Mm-hmm.
Then a year later, you returned to the Nationals as Carolina Turbo XP, I think.
Yes. That was the first year.
Winning the Advanced Division.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, you all had essentially a perfect record.
Yeah.
Certainly on the national level. As you reflect on 2009 and 2010, what comes to mind?
Fun. So much fun. It was very cool. There's a little bit more to that story as well, because we did it with the same 5 people. And there was a time in 2010 when the 4th inside flyer, Ben Worrell, was at flight school because he was an Air Force Academy graduate. And there's even more to this story that in the college years of why the college team was formed. We weren't sure if he was going to compete with us because he was at flight school. And he hadn't trained with us since like May, maybe, of that year. He flew in for nationals. It was a weather delay. It was in Chicago. He made it to be able to compete. He was registered and then competed, made all 10 jumps, and then flew out the day that competition ended, or the day the meet ended, and didn't even get to stand on the podium with us. So like he was there for whatever, maybe 40 hours or something. And we hadn't jumped with him since, like I said, May of that year. Kind of flew in, did the meet. We had a meeting with our coach, and they were like, do you guys want to jump with him? We were like, hell yeah. So he jumped with us. We won. And then I'm pretty sure that he didn't even get to stand on the podium with us.
I was there, and he did not.
Okay.
And what I also recall is your, I guess, player coach was Jan Lane.
Mm-hmm.
And Jan was going to be jumping, in nationals. And I remember, he put in a lot of work that training season, and then Worrell shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just how gracious Jan was to step down to allow Ben to compete.
It was more on him. Like, he was a bigger proponent, I remember this, of telling us that we should jump with Ben. He's like, don't jump with me. Don't worry about performance. Like, you guys have done this in the last 2 years. This is definitely going to be Ben's last competition. Just jump with Ben. And that, with some other factors, we made the decision to jump with Ben, and it's history now.
I remember that was a class act. Did you almost feel like, wow, this skydiving thing is easy? I mean, you guys come right in. And I think it was Shannon's team when he was into land. That was the only other team that had won intermediate and advanced, I think. Or maybe it was collegiates and intermediate.
Something like that. I think it was collegiates, because Shannon, Ian, and I can't remember the other people on that team, but they were the last team to beat the Air Force Academy before we did in 2009.
If you're a DZO or DZM listening to this podcast and you're not using Burble, I've got a question. Why not? If the reason is price, what's the cost of your time? Other booking and manifest softwares are a one-size-fits-all. Burble was built from the ground up by a DZO for DZOs to maximize efficiency. Now, isn't that nice? There's no software that compares. Choose Burble. Burble. Once you win advanced nationals, obviously the next step is open class, which is another thing. But did you, as we look back at that time, you guys coming out of 2009, 2010 as champions, as you go into 2011 as, having left college, starting really a professional team, I suppose, in Turbo XP, looking to get sponsorship, that it suddenly wasn't as easy as it had been.
No.
So it was... all this, great success, and then fast forward through the seasons of 2011, 2015, if I could almost describe it as an outside observer, it was like that period of time was sort of like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, 3 forward, 2 back over the course of years. Like suddenly it was difficult between teammates rotating in and out, which can be certainly challenging. Then losing to Airspeed, losing in 2014 at the Nationals by 1 point.
To the Golden Knight female team.
So, if the first couple of years was fun, what was 11 through 15 for you?
Work, and kind of development of who I am, who we are as people, and determination. We just weren't going to stop. We kind of liked to be that underdog category at that time. Or at least I felt like that's what we liked, and we wanted to prove to everybody that we could do it. Like we wanted to say that we could do it, and it was a lot of work, a lot of hard work, and we were fortunate to have very great support from Skydive Carolina and Danny Smith at the time, which made a lot of it possible. But it was just hard work. We trained during the week. We would train Tuesday through Friday, 2 weeks a month, and then Saturday, Sunday we were doing tandems. And the weeks that we were off, if we weren't training with an 8-way team, we were just mowing the grass, washing the airplanes, doing everything that we could to support ourselves.
I remember one of your teammates, Andrew Happick, for a minute was I think left the team and went and got a job in sort of some kind of an engineering.
Yep. So after he graduated, he never left the team, but he did have a normal working job for a year. Then, he quit that job. It was in Greenville, I'm pretty sure. He worked for a drive shaft manufacturing company or something like that. Big industrial drive shafts for like paper mills and things like that. But that lasted about a year. And then I think we wanted to train more during the week. And he quit his job.
And he quit his job. I was always amazed by that commitment. And also this, there's no guarantee for outcomes in skydiving. And I've always felt that skydiving is the ultimate in, like, you have to love this because, the financial gain or the sacrifices, like your job and security, are so big to be able to compete at an open class level.
Yeah. I mean, Andrew he's the only world champion of us at the current moment. 2-time 8-way world champion right now. There is so much that is unknown and unsure when you're making that jump. And I mean, if you work hard, if you're a good person and you have the best intentions, I think you can make it. It may not be a luxurious lifestyle, but you have to love what you're doing to keep doing it.
As the outsider looking in and having empathy, it's one thing to say what you just said when it's going well, but it was challenging.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there were probably a number of years in that turbo time where, I mean, my bank account had maybe 3 digits in it if it was a good week. I mean, do tandems on Saturday to pay for pack jobs on Tuesday through Friday.
I remember that how fatigued you guys must have been with jumping as hard as one can during the week at a mid-sized drop zone, like Skydive Carolina, and then hardcore tandems all weekend long. And, we were grateful certainly for the tandem help, but, I was always going, gosh, you guys are really putting it, the sacrifice is large.
Yeah, I remember the first day I did like 13 or 14 tandems on a Saturday. I walked up the stairs in the house and I asked my roommate to turn the grill on so that I could make some brats for dinner. And I fell asleep on the floor, on the top of the stairs, and woke up at like 3 o'clock in the morning because I was just so tired. There wasn't another option, like this is what you have to do. This is what I want to do. This is what we have to do. Like, we have these goals, make it happen. This is how much we want to train. This is what we need to do. This is everything that we can do. You just do it. Like, I don't know. There wasn't another option.
Did you enjoy doing tandems?
I really did. I really, really did. I loved it. I really did. Unfortunately, my body can't really handle it anymore. My legs and my back. But I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed doing tandems. It was pretty cool to be able to take people on their first jump.
In 2016, you and your teammate from the beginning, as we were just talking about, Andrew Happick, you guys joined SDC Rhythm XP and see immediate success. In 2016, 17, and 18, the team would take silver at the U.S. Nationals behind Arizona Airspeed in 3 consecutive years. How would you describe the rivalry between you and Airspeed and the heartbreak of being just a few steps behind them for those 3 consecutive years?
Good competition drives you to perform at your best and pushes the sport forward, any sport forward, or any industry forward, I believe. Competition is what makes you push yourself. So I'm thankful for a good competition. I mean, it also makes for a good story when you win. The whole rivalry thing, I'm good friends with a lot of the current Airspeed members right now, and a lot of the old members are some of my role models and heroes. I think the public makes a rivalry what they want it to be, but I think that the competition that we share drives us to be better. I know that the competition we share drives us to be better and is what continues to make the U.S. a dominant force in the skydiving community.
I'm trying to have empathy, though, because the challenge, especially these days, is there's not a lot of sort of the state or regional meets like there used to be. So you train all season long, you get to nationals, maybe you see your competitors at maybe 1 or other 2 meets, whether it be indoor or at a drop zone. But in having empathy, while that may be a healthy competition, it still doesn't dissolve the disappointment of not getting the gold medal for 3 consecutive years, right? Like, how were you able to respond to that? Were you all like, well, we're still growing as a team, or is there a lot of disappointment coming out of that?
Any competitor that trains as much as we did, you have to have some kind of disappointment, for sure. Or that means that you're not invested in what you're doing, If you're just like, oh well, we lost, like, if it doesn't affect you, then it's not going to drive you to be better. There was a point in time, it was actually after 2017, we kind of had a conversation, and we were like, what defines us as champions? And yes, winning for sure, but also the impact that we have on the sport. And I think that it showed at that nationals that we had a lot of support from the skydiving community and our sponsors. And we kind of asked ourselves, would we give up what we have done in the sport to be able to train more? Because that's always the time conundrum. Like, do you coach as much? Do you run as many events? Or do you just train more? Obviously, there's finances involved, but we all kind of came to the consensus that no, like, we would keep it the same schedule that we had because we enjoy seeing our outreach on other people in the sport, in the community. And, like, to be frank, there aren't that many people in the small skydiving community that we have that actually care who won a world meet in 2010. Like, so you have to compete for yourself, but your value in what you do and your self-worth should be in a different place. Because if you put it all in just winning and you never win, you're going to wind up in a spot where you never feel like you've accomplished anything.
After the turbo years, what was the difference, I should say, with how you all went about as a team with turbo to being on a team with Rhythm, with Steve and Jeanette, who had, been on that team for I think at least a decade at that point? What was the major difference that you all came into, you and Andrew, when you joined Rhythm?
Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so, between you and Andrew join Rhythm and immediately you're contending. Mm-hmm. And while I know Steve and Jeanette are very talented, what was the difference? Or when you joined the team, what were you surprised by in terms of the way the training was? Like, how different was that team versus Turbo that opened your eyes like, oh, wow, this is different?
Okay. The opportunity to train more was evident, or was there for sure. We had a winter jumping home. We had better support. But also it was a little bit more methodical and almost too analytical of how we were training, which was good. In Turbo, we thought that we were tracking block times and break times and all of that stuff. But the analytics that Steve and Jeanette brought were, I don't want to say staggering, but on the next level, for sure.
When for the industry that knows Steve and Jeanette, like, they are
amazing
Fantastic. Human beings.
Just absolutely two of the best people ever. They supported me and just been there, and I wouldn't be where I am without them. So I'm very, very, very grateful to have them in my life. They're just great people.
Today there's a whole new lineup. Mm-hmm. I have to imagine that they're proud, though, that the Rhythm XP name continues and under your leadership.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
So in 2018, your team Rhythm was firing on all cylinders and filled with huge confidence, coming off of a silver medal finish in open class, once again to Arizona Airspeed at the 2017 Nationals. Then, disaster. While in the process of landing at high speed, your reserve parachute deploys, causing you to have 2 parachutes out at the same time. You essentially lose all forward momentum and drop straight down to the tarmac. And I'm going to use your words as described, that your right tibia exploded. Yeah. You broke your right fibula and broke your left heel in half. That sounds painful. And then broke your back at the L3 position.
Yep.
So you've talked about this accident extensively, so I won't have you recount that all over again. But for those listening, you were just on the Crave podcast where you go into great detail. So I'll put that in the show notes for anyone that wants to know the details. But let's talk about the recovery period from that. I know about 10 years ago, I tore my ACL, and going through recovery, I went through a stage of depression.
For sure.
For sure. Like, I'm leading this busy life, and then I'm flat on my back. What was that time like for you? Like, take me behind the scenes, because, on social media, we often put forth what's best, but I have to believe there was some suffering behind the scenes that we were unaware of.
For sure. I also I had this thing, it was called the hamster log, because of my trauma ward position. It came out, and it was a name in which I made Facebook posts about it. And I tried to be as transparent as I could with that. And there were some not great posts, some of them were very sad about being depressed and going through that. Again, I'm super fortunate that I could stay active in the sport. Like, I was still coaching a team remotely. I ran a 40-way event from a wheelchair. I had incredible support from my teammates, from Steve and Jeanette and Andrew at the time. It sucked. Yeah, it sucked. I mean, you go from this position where you're in the top of the sport. I remember being in the hospital on the first day, my mom walked in, and I was just like, this is not supposed to happen to me. I'm somebody that people look up to. Like, this doesn't happen to me. What do I do? So I tried to take it upon myself, like, through recovery to share information about the accident and making people more aware of the gear that they're jumping. That was a big thing, because unfortunately the incident has happened too many times to too many people, and it's all the same thing. Just do a better gear check, understand the equipment that you're jumping. But I guess to get back more into your question about recovery, you just have a choice to make. And sometimes we don't make the right choices, and that's okay. But you can either sit there and complain, or you can move forward. And again, I'm super fortunate to have a support system that I did with my mom and my dad and my family. At one point, all of us were living at my sister's house with her 3 boys and her husband and my significant other at the time. And that lasted for maybe a week or two before there was too many people in one house. You're going to feel, I felt alone for sure. No one really understands what you're going through. You're in pain. But again, it just kind of came down to you either move forward and figure it out, or you're not going to get any better.
If you're a fan of the 20-Minute Call, I'd like to invite you to be a member of a budding community with me on Patreon. By becoming a patron of the show, you can join me behind the scenes to discuss options for future guests and gain access to some show swag. It's pretty sweet. Details on how to become a patron can be found in the show notes. Okay, back to the show. When you came out of hospital and was starting to move around, you were on a cane. I also saw you in your wheelchair. Had you told me that you would be jumping again a year and 6 days after the accident, I would never have believed you. I can only imagine that you were just a force with your physical therapy.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really have much else to do. You're in a wheelchair and do the alphabet with your foot so that you get range of motion back in your ankle. It wasn't just me. Like I said, the team, like Steven, Jeanette, and Andrew, they pretty much were just like, hey, we're going to get Rob to fill in for a year because you're going to come back and then we're going to have you on the team. And like in any other professional sport, that doesn't happen. Like the injuries that I sustained, that would put you out. You're off, you're done, because you're not going to be able to perform. Like the first day of training that we had, I think we did 3 jumps, and the next day I couldn't walk. I was like, I just physically couldn't walk. I was in so much pain. But they were like, oh, no worries. Like, we'll just take the day off and we'll hit it again tomorrow. I was like, well, you can just carry me to the airplane. Like, I'm good in free fall. It's the like walking and landing. And I was jumping a big canopy at the time. And they were like, no, probably not the best idea. Like, maybe you just take the day off. To know that I had a spot and that I could come back was just awesome. I mean, that was the other thing. Like, I knew I was going to jump again. I knew it. Like, I was like, I'm going to jump. So, through physical therapy and everything, and I had really good doctors as well. And they were like, okay, well, what are like the things that we need to be worried about? Like, what goals can we set for you to be able to achieve so that we know that you're going to be okay? We're like, okay, like the opening can be brisk. So we want to make sure that your back is good. And the landing, you might have to like step down. So until I could step down or jump down from one stair up on the stairs, or actually 2 stairs, that was kind of like our point of where I needed to achieve. Once I could do that comfortably with minimal pain, then we're like, well, like bones look healed-ish, pretty good. You can walk, you're weight bearing. Then, I mean, you know more about skydiving than we do, and we think you can jump. So I had goals that I needed to achieve, and I set them and achieved them, and then I knew I was coming back.
What were your emotions like getting on the plane for the first time back after over a year?
That's 5 years ago now. Nervous, excited, scared. I mean, it's kind of like making your first jump again. I was like, man, I hope everything goes okay. Like, I hope the landing's good and all that. And maybe even a little bit more scared because I had experience at that time. And I was like, well, my leg should be able to hold up. Excited, nervous, scared.
It's like not even jumping with gear fear, jumping with body fear. Like, yeah. How will my leg handle with this? How will my back handle with this? And I did a hop and pop, and I landed in the P's. So how long before your jump back before you started training?
Jumping training?
Mm.
I want to say it was like maybe 2 more weeks, because I made the jump back on April 18th-ish. And then I think the first jump camp was like the first week of May. So like maybe 2 more weeks. So we've been training in the tunnel since then, or before then.
And Nationals that year was what, October, November time?
It was at XP, so it was September.
So this is really where we get to a crescendo, what I can only be described as a miracle. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like made for TV. With the minimal training jumps, I mean, being that you really came back in summer.
200. We did 200 before we got to XP.
And how does that compare to typical year of training?
Less than half. Usually we're doing 500 or 600 easily.
So at 200 jumps, though, I mean, how is your body responding? That's still a lot of jumps in a short period of time.
Mm-hmm. How is my body responding?
I mean, were you in a lot of pain?
Just deal with it.
So with minimal training jumps back 200, you and your teammates enter the 2019 Nationals with zero expectations of, I mean, were you thinking podium finish maybe?
In the 2 weeks before Nationals, a lot happened. We were like, okay, we want to get close to where we were in 17, and that's probably not feasible. We were doing like, before we left Chicago, we were doing like a 22-ish average, and then we did 20 jumps in or at XP before nationals, and both of the draws that we did over a 25. And at one point, even Andrew and I looked at each other and we were like, "Hey, Jeanette, will you score that one more time and just make sure these numbers are right?" And we were like, "I don't know what's going on, but like we're doing a 25 at this point," which was, I think, more than any of us expected.
Why, in retrospect, why do you think you all were performing at such a high level? What was clicking?
Everything. I mean, everything was clicking. Everybody just felt great. Maybe it was because we had no expectations at that point, but the team, everybody was in a great mood, and we just felt good, and we had fun, and every jump, we just put it all out there, and we're like, this is it. Like, let's just go do it and see what happens, you know? Sometimes I think everybody kind of gets into their own heads about expectations of performance, and man, we were just having fun. We did like really silly stuff with putting the creepers away and all kinds of it didn't matter. Nothing mattered. We were like, we're just going to go jump.
That's the hard part about competition, right? Like, you know, most of my competition comes in golf, and if you're worried about the water, you're going to hit it in the water.
Yeah.
In your case, when you remove expectations, it allows for a better place for a flow state.
Yeah.
To come alive. So how is it when you know, with the amount of money and time and training jumps that are being made, how does one navigate psychologically to not let expectations get in the way of performance when expectations are so high based on the input that you all are putting in?
Read a lot of books, compete as much as you can, and debrief your mental state. Like, understand what things could be trigger points of like what made you get over the line. Debrief high level each jump, you know, how you guys felt, how you felt individually. Take notes of the things that calm you down, develop your routine, whatever it may be. I mean, I went from competing, like when we first were competing with VTSD, I would carry a bag in my jumpsuit because before round one and some of the other rounds, I would get so nervous or anxious that I would get nauseous. Like I would feel like I was going to throw up. So I was like, just in case I throw up on the plane, I'm carrying a bag with me. But I started reading a lot about sports psychology, developing a state of flow, trusting in the training, all of that stuff.
All right, what I'd like to do is I want to play you a video.
Oh boy.
And have you respond to that. And for listeners, you'll hear this audio, but if you'd like to watch the same video, do have a look in your show notes. So let's have a listen to what you said and what your teammate will be the other audio about that day at the Nationals in 2019.
I never expected to be where I was at the start of the 2019 U.S. Nationals. Airspeed had not been beaten in 11 years. I had just come off of a pretty serious injury. I was wheelchair bound for about 3 or 4 months. When he was injured, we had no idea when he would walk again, when he'd be able to jump again, and when he was able to jump, how much he'd be able to do. Our team had done less training than we ever had. Our thoughts were not on winning. It doesn't logically make sense. I remember the first jump was early in the morning, and it was beautiful from up top. The sunlight was hitting the top of the low clouds. We had a great jump. We go, it's a fast round. We land, and we won the round. Everything started to click, and that's when we realized that we could actually do this. The competition's a battle. It goes back and forth. They score round 10, and we lose by a point, which ties us. So now we go to a jump off. The last jump off was like maybe 10 years or 11 years before that. And this is a jump off to select the U.S. team to represent the United States at the next World Championships. And that's been our goal. We had this overwhelming sense of just confidence and trust and togetherness. And we had that same attitude for round 11. Read a lot of sports psychology, and they talk about like entering a state of flow. And that's what the whole competition was. When we land for round 11, we go into the hangar, and there's like hundreds of people in there, and it is dead quiet as they score the videos. And they score us first, and we scored 22 points in time with one bus, and it was my bus. And I was like, that was hard to have, you know. And then they score Airspeed second, and there's like little red bars where the judges confirm the scores, and like one judge confirmed 20. And then felt like another 10 years. And then the other judge confirmed 20. And then finally all the judges confirmed 20. And I mean, the hangar erupted. It was so much screaming and happiness, and yeah, it was something that dreams are made of, and the way it happened, you can't recreate something like that.
As we stop that audio, I look over at you and you are very emotional.
Nah, just a little bit.
And watching that, my hair on my arm stands up. It is the most extraordinary thing, particularly when we see imagery of you in a wheelchair and knowing the struggle that went through. Like, it's hard. Like, if that was a movie script, it would be hard to believe. But with all the emotions that you're feeling, what are you feeling?
I'm happy, you know. I miss that team and those people. I don't know. I mean, it kind of made me rethink some things as well right now. Like, like through recovery and when I came back, I made a point, like, I don't want this to be about the injury and the comeback and all that and everything. But I mean, it's part of my journey, you know, and I guess it's part of who I am at this point. I still don't think it defines me as a person or a competitor. But
the injury.
Yes, the injury. Yeah, the injury for sure. You know, because that was a big thing. Everybody was like, oh, the injury. And like, even, you know, 5 years later, I'll be honest, like when you first started talking about it, I was like, okay, we'll talk about the injury again and like all that. But, you know, seeing that, it's part of me, part of my journey, my story. And if somebody can be inspired or if people can learn from it and become safer, because no one wants to go through that. No one wants to go through that. But if it can make people safer or people learn, make the sport safer, make our gear better. I mean, we already have great gear, and honestly, the gear wasn't the issue. Or somebody's inspired by it, then I think that's great.
Take me to the day. It was 11 rounds across 2 days. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to start day one of competition with no expectations and go, ooh. As we heard Andrew's voice in that piece, it was clicking, right? Like, oh, wow, we won the first round.
Yeah.
You know, didn't really expect that. And it's flowing. Then you leave the drops and you sleep on that. Mm-hmm. You know, what was that night of sleep where, you know, going, holy cow, what's happening here?
I think, actually, I know that, honestly, it was just more confidence building. Because we were like, man, like we said, it's not logical for us to be in contention. It wasn't. But for us to be in the battle, and I'm trying to remember, but I don't remember exactly because I'm getting 17 and 19 kind of confused. But I think the last round scored of the first day, we wound up going back up in 19, and we were up by maybe a point going into day 2. I think that's how it went. Again, I don't remember exactly, but it was just more confidence building. All of us were like, oh dude, we got this. Like, well, let's just keep going. You know, I think everybody slept really well. There wasn't this, like, it was just more confidence building. I don't think there's anything after round 1 throughout that competition. All of it, we all just took as confidence building.
I've been to my fair share of nationals, and when things start getting down to the wire, right? Like, there's a tightening, and, you know, nobody wants to, like, if you're there supporting the team, like I would have with Virginia Tech Space Dockers and even Turbo XP, when things are getting tight, like, I don't want to look at you in your eye. You know, I don't want to throw you off of whatever flow state you're in. I think what I'm like wrestling with is, how do you not get in your own way on day 2? Like, we could do this. And here's the thing is, we might not just be able to do this, but against the team that's beaten us the last 3 years in a row where we've been silver. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you not get ahead of yourself and stay in the present? Because it would be so easy to let that happen.
From being seasoned competitors and having the dynamic that we've had, us being together and competing together for years before that, and just having fun. I mean, that's really what it was. Like, we all understood how to handle that. like I said, we trusted in each other because we had been in similar situations like this in the past. Like all of those close losses just made us better in the long run. Like perseverance and being there with each other and just trust and being seasoned competitors at that point.
Sometimes when there's a major achievement, it's hard to appreciate it in the moment, right? It takes a little bit of time and distance to be able to reflect going, wow, that happened. Did that occur for you, or you were like, I can't believe this is, like, did you understand how momentous it was when you guys got down from round 11?
Once they scored round 11, and then it set in because we were like, oh my God, we won. And I remember Andrew was sitting in front of me, and we were just sitting there staring at the scores. And once they confirmed that, man, everybody just jumped up and screaming. And yeah, at that point, yeah, it set in very quickly then, for me at least. And then actually my mom and my aunt like walked in the hangar because they saw the scores were really close, and she was in Raleigh, so they both drove over, and they were the second people that I saw once we found out we won. And I was like, oh my God, Mom, I love you, because my parents have been great supporters of me, so it was pretty wild.
Speaking of, I mean, how is your mom about your comeback? I mean, if I'm having empathy for any parent going, gosh, I wish he would just stop doing this. I've seen him at his worst, at the lowest.
My mom is amazing. She was with me every day for like 63 days straight. She was there every day. And that year was difficult for my mother as well. Her mother passed like shortly before I was injured, and she was dealing with that. And then I got hurt, and then there was some other stuff that happened. But my mom has always been the rock, and just... she's an amazing woman, and she was there every day for like I think it was 63 days straight. I saw my mom. We had a medical transport, which was a Cessna Citation with a gurney and a stretcher in it. And she flew with me from Melbourne up to Rock Hill. Again, part of that support system that I'm very thankful and grateful for.
This podcast is sponsored by Beyond Marketing, the digital marketing agency for the skydiving industry. Now, I'm not a fan of lots of ads during a podcast. I mean, who likes ads? So I'll stop talking about how marvelously wonderful Beyond Marketing is. But if you're curious about what the amazing people at Beyond Marketing do to help drop zones and manufacturers thrive, then you should check out their website at dropzone.marketing. That's dropzone.marketing. Let's talk about another important person in your life, and that's Andrew Happick.
Oh my God!
And Andrew,
make me cry again.
Andrew has been with you. I mean, I met you and Andrew on the same day, and he's been like the one constant between every funnily named team. Really almost to present day. He's not on the current lineup on Rhythm, but he was with you on at 2019. And really almost every competitive day prior.
Absolutely.
And he's a little bit more quiet, so
got to watch out for the quiet ones.
You got to watch out for the quiet ones. Tell us a little bit about Andrew and what he means to you.
Oh, man. He's my best friend. He's just an amazing person, incredible competitor. Just maybe my opinion's biased, but I think he's the best skydiver in the world for sure. He's so fast, humble, incredibly knowledgeable. Just couldn't ask for a better person.
I'm a fan.
Yeah, me too.
All right, let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk about life as a professional skydiver. Life as a professional skydiver is not an easy journey, as glamorous as it may sound to those that are not in the know. It's one thing to have your equipment and jumps paid for, and that's only reserved for really the top civilian teams. But it's another
between.
Yeah, it's another to pay your bills. How do you do it?
So I run events and I coach teams. It helps that Rhythm has tunnel workshops once a month, every month from November, October through May. So that helps. I usually have at least one 4-way team and one 8-way team that I work with every year. I started to get into running big way events as well. That's a kind of another story, but because I like big ways and kind of wanted to change the community in the big way world. But that's how I do it. It's a lot of work, but it's fun and I want to do it.
What do you sacrifice to live the life that you live?
my body, time with my significant other, with Jamie, maybe some sanity here and there. I mean, it's about the community, and kind of goes back to like what defined us as champions in 2017 is everyone starts skydiving for the same, 10, 15 reasons. But people that stay in the sport because of the community. The community's been such a big part for me growing up in it, seeing it, being there, supporting me through the injury. I just want to continue to give back. And not unfortunately, but fortunately, I get to make a living doing it as well. So I don't have much to complain about. I'm lucky. I'm very, very lucky, I think.
Do you ever think to yourself, do you have any regret? And what I mean, I'll put that in better context. If you're working a 9 to 5, you might have more security, let's say.
No regret. Absolutely not. I don't think I could do the office job. I mean, I'm sure I could because I would have to or whatever, but no, absolutely not. I mean, I'm going to be in this sport as long as I can be, hopefully for forever. And, if I physically can't jump anymore, I'd like to still be involved at some point. What we do is very special, and I think I'm just lucky and grateful to be a part of it.
In the times that I see is really when you're back here in town, and we might sort of connect for a conversation as we're having now. When I see you on social, you're here and you're there, and you're living a very busy life at drop zones and meeting incredible people within our community. But tell me a really cool story that I'd be like, wow, that is a very cool experience beyond, say, the 2019 Nationals, but just something that I may not know about that is pretty cool.
So it was, there's actually two, and they kind of they both directly involve Craig Girard. The first time I ever met Craig, and we were talking about Craig earlier today, but the first time I ever met Craig, it was either Collegiates or Nationals. No, it was Collegiates because Nationals was in Spaceland 2009. So it must have been Collegiates, and he was at the bar at the Bent Prop. And at the time, I had like probably $25 in my bank account. And I studied his videos, I watched him, I was like, oh my God. I guess I'll tell this kind of embarrassing factoid as well. He's actually in my phone as the God himself, Craig Girard. And that was a joke that me and my old teammate had, Joey Kaufmano. But anyways, he was at the bar, and I was like, oh my God, you're him. You're Craig. And he was like, yeah, man, how are you? What's your name? And I was like, you're Craig Girard. You're the guy. You're him. He's like, yeah, man, can I buy you a beer? And I was like, no, I'm going to buy you a beer. And then he let me buy him a beer. And that was kind of cool that he was going to buy me a beer. And I was like, he was my idol at the time. And it kind of still is. But the other one was actually with Craig. And I remember I wanted to get into big ways. And that was another reason to join Rhythm, because of I could continue on building and creating a high-level event. That's always been a goal of mine. So it's the first year that I was doing 40 ways for the All-American Invitational. And I remember I brought Craig out, and I was like, one, I get to organize an event with Craig. This is amazing. Like, he's fucking Craig, And I get there, and I kept on asking him questions, and I was like, well, what do you think? What do you think? And he, stopped, and he sat me down. He's like, this is your event. I'm here to help you and support you. And at that point, I was like, oh my God, really? Craig's working for me, and he's telling me that this is mine, and I get to tell him what to do? I was like, is this real? I'm working with my idols, and then he's telling me that I get to tell him what to do? I was like, this is crazy. So those are kind of those two moments that I have.
Great stories.
Pinch me.
Yeah, and Craig is such a class act.
He is.
What do you think you would have done if you had not become a professional skydiver?
Well, I was studying civil engineering. I wanted to design water treatment plants, wastewater treatment plants. I enjoyed landfills as well, like a sustainable landfill design, smaller landfills that you can cycle through and reuse the land in a shorter period of time.
That's interesting.
Yeah, using different microbacteria to help decompose the waste products faster, harvesting the methane gas to burn for renewable energy and things like that.
And didn't Leah Levy go to Virginia Tech as well?
She did. Yeah.
Also sort of recycling parachute materials with her company. A lot of talent come out of Virginia Tech.
Andrew Happick.
Andrew Happick, of course, along with Ben Worrell and Joey Coffino.
Ben Worrell's actually flying F-22s now out in Nellis.
Yeah, he's a cool cat for sure.
Yeah, Coffino's getting married, and we are going to the wedding in November, so we'll all see each other.
I heard.
Yeah.
That's exciting. So who are your mentors today in the sport?
Stephen Jeanette, Craig, Dan BC. Those are the big ones that I look up to for sure.
What excites you the most about skydiving right now?
My team that I'm on, the people that I get to jump with, the people that I get to impact. The big wave community, honestly, is super great. It's growing. We have just awesome communication between everybody. I think it's finally coming, or not finally, but it's coming back. We're having a resurgence of it. So it's super, super exciting. And training with my guys.
Speaking of your guys, it's kind of about to be very interesting in four-way.
Mm-hmm.
We've got some movement happening with Airspeed.
Not yet, but yeah.
So we're hearing it.
It'll happen. I mean, their plan is after Israel, possibly 2 of them will be stepping down, but who knows until it actually happens.
A lot shaking out at the moment.
Yeah, and the girls are doing phenomenal. And now we have the Golden Knights back fielding a 4-way team. So the next few years are going to be really, really fun. You know, being in that battle is very good.
Do you have any hobbies outside of the sport?
Yeah, I like working on cars. So I have like a project car that I've been working on over the past month. Actually, did some big things. We're putting a turbo on it, new fuel system, everything that goes along with that. So it's a frustrating hobby, but I enjoy it. I've always enjoyed cars, so it's fun to be able to turn wrenches and pull it apart and make it go faster and see what happens.
Do you know who's also extremely talented at wrenching cars?
Craig
Girard.
He was a mechanic.
Yeah, correct. It's always kind of interesting to know what people are reading or listening to in terms of podcasts or audiobooks. What books are you listening to or reading, and what podcasts do you listen to?
What podcasts do I listen to? I like Planet Money. I'm listening to Rogan a little bit. Everything with a grain of salt, but I listen to Rogan a little bit. I like a lot of sports psychology stuff. I listened to a really, really interesting interview that Dave Schwartz turned me onto. It was the guy who wrote the biography about Elon Musk. It's pretty long. It's maybe 90 minutes for this one interview, but he talks about the guy interviews him about writing the biography about Musk, and he's done other ones as well. Like I think he did one on Einstein and some other people. But listening to that was just super eye-opening about Elon. And
is that Walter Isaacson? Is that who you're referring to?
Yeah.
I always like to end my podcast with this question, and that is crossroads moments. A moment in your life where maybe you had not said yes or taken an action. And had you not taken that action or said yes, you are not sitting in front of me right now. Can you think of a crossroads moment that was key to the direction of your life?
I mean, there's 2 big ones for sure. One, deciding to go to Virginia Tech, and then 2, deciding to leave Turbo and go to Rhythm. The Turbo Rhythm decision was not made in a short period of time. It was at least a month, almost 2 months of communication between the teams, the drop zones, and it was a very, very big decision that that Andrew and I did not take lightly. Like I said, probably about 2 months of conversation, because they asked after nationals and we did not make the decision until like after Thanksgiving. So almost 2 months.
Indulge me with a final question, Doug. For those young kids in college today who are on collegiate teams, or young kids or young people, let's say, that aspire to get to the level you are now, you know, the journey is not linear and it is not short. What advice would you give to them?
Work hard, ask questions, ask for help, set goals. Remember, that's one thing Kirk said early in my career. He was like, I'm trying to remember exactly how he phrased it, but something along the lines of like, have a goal and make a plan to achieve that, or you have a plan based on what you think you can do. And if you have the goal and you have this plan that you know you can make that happen, do it, whatever it takes. Or you can go down the path where it's a little bit easier and not as defined, and okay, well, this is what I think I can do. If that's all you think you can do, then that's all you're ever going to do. Set the goal and make it happen, whatever it takes.
Perfect place to end. Doug Barron, thank you so much for being with me on the show. You are a true ambassador for our sport. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Thanks for having me.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to the 20 Minute Call podcast. Please do follow us on your podcast app so you always have the latest episode, which is released every Monday. If you want to contact the team, our email address is podcast@beyondmarketing.xyz. This episode was edited and engineered by Garnet Znydrick of the YouTube channel Blue Skies Fun Days. Thanks for listening, and join us next week for our next episode.